Now, I've been watching a lot of March Madness, and a couple of days ago, I stumbled upon a really interesting thread that brought up a very interesting question. Not a single time in history had a 16 seed defeated a number 1 seed until 2018, where the great Virginia lost to UMBC. This was seen as a one-in-a-lifetime kind of upset at the time, and I vividly remember thinking about how I might not see it for a very long time, if not ever. Except it just happened again. The 64-team bracket was inducted in 1985, and it took just 33 years for a 16 seed to beat a 1 seed, then 5 years later it happened again. Another wild stat is before 2021, Florida Gulf Coast was the only 15 seed to make it to the Sweet 16, defeating San Diego State in 2013, 81-71. But in 3 consecutive years starting in 2021, there have been a 15 seed present in the Sweet 16. So what's happening with college basketball? Are teams more upset prone nowadays compared to the past? Well, let's talk about it and find out. Yo, what's up everybody? It's your boy 2KJ, and today I want to bring up a very interesting topic I've been thinking about when it comes to upsets in the NCAA tournament. For some reason, I feel like they're more prone to happening nowadays, and they might be even more prone to happening in the future. Well, I'm going to share my insight on why this might be happening, why I might be bugging, but if you guys like the content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let's get right on with it. So what makes an upset in the NCAA tournament? Obviously, the textbook definition is when a lower seed beats a higher seed, but we all know that some of the games are basically even, with the 8 and 9 seed games being toss-ups. So, for the sake of making this a bit easier, we're going to exclude those, only looking at the 10 to 15 seeded games. Taking a first glance at the numbers, the 10-7 upset is the most occurring, happening around 39% of the time. This is followed closely by 11-6 and 12-5, which happen around 38 and 35% of the time respectively. These are seen as more common in our eyes, as they usually happen around once or twice a tournament and can be sometimes easily predicted because of how weak the 5 to 7 seeds can be. Now, 13 seed and up is where things start to get interesting. Taking place around 21% of the time, these upsets are usually more bracket busting, with very solid teams that could possibly make big runs being taken down in the first round. A great example of this is Virginia, with 2 such losses in the past 3 years to Furman this year and Ohio 2 years ago. Next, we have the 14-3 upset, which takes a significant dip at around 15% of the time. This kind of upset has become more and more rare, with it only occurring 9 times in the past 23 years. Now, the next 2 is where we start to get into super unlikely territory, with the 15-2 upset only happening 11 times in NCAA history at 7%. But in the last 10 seasons has happened 5 times, with a streak of 3 in a row currently in progress. Now, obviously, the 16-1 upset is the most unlikely, and the 2 times it's happened increased its probability to a staggering 1.32%. And now that we have all the percents listed out, let's compare them to the last 10 years of NCAA tournaments and see if the upset percentage has increased or decreased. First things first, starting off with the 10-7 upset, which has happened 14 times in the past 10 seasons, making its number slightly under average at 35%. Next is the 11-6 upset, which has taken place a staggering 20 times over the past 10 years, making it a 50% chance of victory for 11 ranked teams. It's very interesting, and we'll actually get back to that in a little bit. The 12-5 matchup is also up on its average at 38%, with 15 victories over that span. Now, 13-4 is where things start to get back to normal, with 8 upsets in the past 10 years, bringing its average to around 20%, which is the norm. Same thing for the 14-3 upset, with 15% and 6 victories in that span, rounding very close to its total average. The only 2 in the later half that have seen increases are the 15-2 upset and 16-1 upset, with 15-2 happening 5 times in the past 10 years, making it a number around 13% of the time. Same for the 16-1, which has taken place around 5% of the time as well. Looking at these totals poses a very interesting result, one that I certainly wish I realized before March Madness started, not halfway through, so my bracket didn't literally crash and burn after the first round. But most upsets aren't happening at a higher rate like I suspected. They're happening at a more consistent rate, meaning that you can use these numbers in conjunction with using team metrics and stats to sometimes give yourself a better chance at guessing when they're going to happen. Now, the 11-6 upset, like I said, is very interesting, and I have a theory as to why it may keep happening somewhere around this insane clip. Not to say that 6th-ranked teams are bad, but they usually aren't the best composed teams. Let's look at Iowa State this year for an example. Those who watched the Cyclones knew they were pretty inconsistent. Some games they showed up, some games they didn't. That inconsistency in a team makes it the perfect recipe for an upset. March Madness thrives because it's a one-game tournament. If you're playing a team you've never played before and they come out the gates and shock you early, they might just beat you. And if you know about college basketball, you know that some of the teams that got upset in the first round were known to be inconsistent. Look at Purdue, look at Arizona. I've been on their subreddits and I've heard them talk about their teams all year being very inconsistent and they don't really think they're going to make deep runs, and that inconsistency is what led them to be upset. And also with the creation of the transfer portal, we might start seeing wider spread talent. Not anymore is talent just going to be at a couple teams. Some of these transferring players can make it to mid-majors and help their teams make bigger upsets at the tournament. Obviously, this is all pretty much a guessing game in theory, but I think this might help you make your bracket just good enough to beat all your friends next year, and maybe good enough to get it perfect. So, what do you guys think? Do you think that more upsets are going to start happening due to things like the transfer portal? Or do you think the numbers will stay mostly the same? Post your thing down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace!